네, 반갑습니다. 매번 시민이고요. 정말 이 참혹하고 끔찍한 이 상황에 가만히 있을 수만은 없어서 성명서를 준비해봤습니다. 같이 한번 나눠주신 페이퍼를 보시면은 그 내용이 있거든요. 같이 보시면서 보조분들을 보셨으면 좋겠습니다. 인류와 지구에 대한 범죄, 후쿠시마 핵오염수 방류 즉각 중단하라. 2023년 8월 14일 일본의 기시다의 오만과 미국 바이든, 한국의 윤석열 정권은 찬성과 지지 속에 핵폐기수 무단 방류란 전 지구적 전후무한 범죄가 시작되었다. 앞으로 최소 30년이 계속될 이 범죄극으로 인체와 지구, 생명체에 치명적인 삼중수소를 비롯하여 60여 종의 방사성 물질이 차곡차곡 쌓일 것이다. 혹자는 이유도 모른 채 암에 걸릴 것이고, 혹자는 기형아가 될 것이고, 누구는 죽고 어떤 종은 멸종될 것이다. 그러나 더욱 무서운 것은 이러한 대지구적인 재앙의 시작이 어제 오늘의 일이 아니란 사실이다. 1976년, 79년 미국의 스리마의 섬, 1986년 러시아의 제르노빌 사태는 핵의 위험을 이미 전 인류에 똑똑히 보여준 사례였다. 그럼에도 이 사회는 마약 중독자처럼 그 발전을 멈추지 못하고 있다. 오히려 깨끗하고 저렴한 그런 구호에 도취되어 스스로의 이마에 용암이 담긴 단지를 놀리고 아슬아슬한 댄스를 주고 있다. 당장 핵발전을 멈추고 생태 친화적인 에너지를 전환, 에너지 주기로 몰두한데도 부족할 마당에 핵 폐기물을 그대로 바다에 방류하겠다 한다. 인간의 목숨이 그토록 쉬운가? 지구의 생명체가 그토록 가벼운가? 이 지구별은 우리와 우리의 자손들이 대지의 어머니의 품에서 서로 아끼며 살아가야 할 것이다. 한층 끝없는 이윤을 추구하는 너희들 눈에는 보잘것없어 보이지만 우리는 피곤하고 고달픈 나날을 견디며 이 생산의 길을 지구를 연장면을 우리의 땀으로, 우리의 기름으로 건설하고 움직여 왔다. 우리는 후쿠시마 핵폐기물 독일을 용납할 수도 그대로 주저앉아 지켜보고 있을 수만은 없다. 왜? 우리와 우리의 아이들이 살아야 할 땅이기 때문이다. 왜? 우리가 피땀 흘려 건설하고 만든 세상이기 때문이다. 권력은 짧고 역사는 길다. 영원한 듯 보이지만 너희들 가진 자기의 권력은 영원은 결코 오래가지 않는다. 오히려 그 밑에서 숨지고 있는 민중들의 삶은 그 끊임없는 생명력으로 역사의 도도한 흐름을 만들어내고 있다. 노동의 직관으로, 민중의 지혜로 우리는 알고 있다. 새로운 길을 열려면 낡은 길을 반드시 닫아야 한다는 사실을 우리는 훔칠 것이다. 우리는 점점 세지고 매 순간 젊어질 것이고 투쟁 속에 확장될 것이다. 우리의 이 말을 짓누르는 너희의 거짓 선정과 달콤한 친환경적이라는 유혹에 베일을 짚고 입어야 말 것이다. 이 푸르른 대지에 배수로 변한 너희를 축출하고 노동과 삶의 가치를 평등 속에 실현하는 인간의 세상을 마침내 보고야 말 것이다. 그것을 우리 자손들에게 남겨줄 것이다. 부탁이나 청원이 아니다. 명령이다. 실제로 가진 자를 위해 복무하는 너희 권력의 가르테에게 명령한다. 하루하루 고귀한 노동으로 세상을 건설하는 우리와 우리의 아이들의 이름으로 명령한다. 위협받고 사라지는 지구의 모든 생명체의 존엄을 어깨에 지고 명령한다. 다시는 돌이킬 수 없는 전후무한 역사에 대한 범죄를 즉각 중단하라. 명령이다. 후쿠시마 핵핵무기 즉각 중단하라. 2023년 9월 23일 후쿠시마 핵핵 기물 방류 저지 촛불행동 멜번 참가자 일동. 감사합니다.
소리 더 크게 우리말로 가열차게
I too wish to acknowledge that we stand on Aboriginal land, that sovereignty has never been ceded, and pay my respects to the elders of the Wurundjeri people past and present. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and congratulations to the Korean community in taking a stand. I don't think I can be as loud and as effective as Michael, but I will do something, I hope, to add to the conversation. I hate the idea of nuclear energy in all its forms. I have a personal reason for that. I grew up in England. I was a baby when the worst nuclear accident in British history ever took place in 1957. And I was still living in England when the worst nuclear accident in Europe ever took place at Chernobyl. And I had to walk the streets along with millions of others knowing that radioactivity was coming down from the skies onto us. There is no safe nuclear energy. There is no safe nuclear waste. There are no safe nuclear power stations. There are no safe nuclear bombs. Everything about the nuclear cycle, including the damage it does to the lands of indigenous people in Australia where it is mined, everything is wrong, everything is dangerous. Now I'm speaking on behalf of the No AUKUS Coalition of Victoria. AUKUS, some of you may know by now, is the military agreement between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States. And at the heart of that agreement is the idea that Australia will become the first country in the world to get nuclear-powered submarines without a nuclear industry, and the first time that the United States will transfer its nuclear submarine technology to another country since it gave it to Britain. This is a very scary moment for the world because it marks a significant step up in the risk of nuclear war in the Pacific. The land where we live in Australia, the land where your families live in Korea, people of China, the people of Japan. The risk of nuclear war between the United States and its allies in China is becoming greater and greater. And that war could spin off into a nuclear war. So the threat of nuclear damage or of nuclear annihilation is growing step by step. And so the No AUKUS Coalition is opposed to the nuclear submarines. $368 billion, a conservative estimate that could be spent on fighting climate change, on schools and hospitals, and so many things that we know we need every single day. $368 billion will go on nuclear submarines that have one purpose: to sit in the South China Sea and threaten China. And China knows that, and so they will build more submarines, they will build more missiles, and we'll have an upward spiral of militarism that will go higher and higher and threaten us all. Now AUKUS is one of those coalitions. Another one is the Quad, and that is a military alliance between the United States, Australia, India and Japan. And that is at the expense of ordinary people in all those countries. Our brothers and sisters in Japan are also victims of Fukushima. They are also victims of the nuclear industry. They are also victims of their own government and its corruption around the nuclear industry. We can make common cause from Australia to Japan to Korea, across the Asia Pacific, against the nuclear industry. But there's another war threat that we need to mobilise against, and that's the expansion of the NATO military alliance, which is the United States and its European allies, is expanding into the Asia Pacific. And that affects Australia, who is invited to their meetings, and South Korea, and New Zealand, and Japan. And all of this is to strengthen the drive to war in the West against China. I'm no friend of Xi Jinping. I'm no friend of the regime in Beijing. But we have no interest in fighting the ordinary people of China, and they have no interest in fighting the ordinary people of Australia and of Korea. And that's why the No AUKUS Coalition is mobilising. We have had rallies, we have forums, and we will keep on mobilising, and we welcome your support against the drive to war. And at the heart of that drive to war is the risk of nuclear annihilation. What Japan is about to do with releasing water into the Pacific is nothing compared to what would happen if one nuclear missile is released on the people of anywhere in the Western Pacific. It's nothing compared to a nuclear power station erupting, exploding like Chernobyl did in Ukraine back in the 1980s. We cannot take the risk with nuclear because we can see the price. That is why we're here tonight. The price of nuclear is pollution, it is radiation, it is damage and it is death. And we cannot stand by and let that happen. And the nuclear industry over here is linked to the nuclear armaments industry over there. They are brother and sister. So when we oppose nuclear waste, we have to oppose nuclear weapons and we have to oppose the drive to war. And it's in that spirit that we stand here and give you our solidarity, because the Pacific Ocean is our ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is our ocean. Anywhere where nuclear waste can be dumped is part of our planet and is a risk to all of us and our children, and we have to fight that. We will not let it happen. We will not let it happen. We have to fight to make sure the nuclear maniacs of every country, including Australia, step back, and if they will not step back, we will step up and we will take the power out of their hands. There is no safe nuclear. We see it now with Fukushima. We have seen it before. We cannot take the risk for the future generation. Solidarity.
방금 얘기한 데이비드 그란트 씨는 노워커스 빅토리아 코레이션에서 발음이 죄송합니다. 노워커스 빅토리아에서 왔고, 제가 통역을 간단하게 하려고 했는데 너무 길어서 다 알아들으셨죠?
My name's Jamie, I'm from IPAN. I'd like to thank the organisers and the Korean community and everyone who's here today for this really important rally. I'd also like to echo Michael and others in their acknowledgement of the traditional owners, the Wurundjeri, and I want to point out that this land was stolen. It was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. IPAN is a network of organisations. It's a national organisation and it has state and regional branches, and I'm a member of the Geelong branch. I live down in Geelong. IPAN advocates for Australia to develop an independent foreign policy that promotes peace. We oppose foreign military bases and troops on Australian soil and interventions by foreign governments, corporations and other vested interests that impinge upon our sovereignty. IPAN is a member of No AUKUS Victoria, and we oppose nuclear weapons and nuclear-powered submarines. We're a peace organisation. So why is a peace organisation speaking at this rally? Most people and groups in the peace movement are opposed not only to nuclear weapons but also to nuclear energy because of the risk of accidents like Fukushima and because of the problem of dealing with radioactive waste. No country in the world has ever found a way to safely store radioactive waste for the hundreds and hundreds of years that it remains poisonous. The peace movement believes peace is a human right, and we advocate for the protection of all human rights. We see the risk that nuclear waste poses to people and the environment as a breach of human rights. Dumping radioactive wastewater into the ocean affects all of us, breaches the human rights of all of us, and we condemn the Japanese government for its action, and we condemn other governments, including those of Korea and Australia, for supporting Japan in this appalling action. Most people and organisations in the peace movement are also very concerned about environmental destruction and climate change. The world's military is the single biggest emitter of carbon emissions. We in the peace movement understand that we will not be able to stop global warming unless we can also stop militarism. We understand that the peace and environment movements need to work together to protect our planet. So we show solidarity with the environment movement by attending and speaking at rallies like this. The peace movement knows that militarism and imperialism are responsible for the development of nuclear weapons. The world is closer to nuclear war now than it has been since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. We must prevent this. Again, that will only happen if the peace and environment movements work together. Now, David's already talked a bit about AUKUS, but I have a couple of things that I would like to add. Nuclear-powered submarines are for attack, not defence. and they generate radioactive waste. We oppose them. AUKUS also means US B-52 bombers and nuclear-powered submarines will be allowed to be stationed in Australia, even though the US has a policy of neither confirming nor denying whether or not its bombers and submarines are carrying nuclear weapons. This is in complete contradiction to Australia's commitment to non-proliferation. Those bombers and subs become a target in the event of war. If they were bombed, highly enriched uranium would be released on impact. AUKUS has also emboldened those who advocate for a nuclear power industry to be developed in Australia. It's completely unnecessary in Australia, which has an abundance of sunshine, wind and hydro. Nuclear power is incredibly expensive, and as we've already mentioned, there's no way to safely store the waste. We reject nuclear power. AUKUS has emboldened those who advocate for Australia to develop and operate an international nuclear waste dump. That is, for Australia to take receipt of nuclear waste from other countries and store it here. We utterly reject this plan. I'm just going to skip this bit because David said it. We in the peace movement also fear that obtaining nuclear-powered submarines could potentially lead to Australia purchasing or manufacturing nuclear weapons here, thus contributing to the proliferation of nuclear weapons. There is not one good argument for Australia to be part of AUKUS or to obtain nuclear-powered submarines. We demand that the Australian government protest in the strongest terms the Japanese government's dumping of nuclear wastewater into the ocean. We in the peace movement stand with the people of Korea in condemning the Japanese government's breach of our human rights by dumping radioactive wastewater from Fukushima into the ocean. And we hope that you will stand with us in opposing AUKUS and all things nuclear in Australia. Thank you.
지금 발언할 제이콥은 소셜리스트 얼라이언스에서 나온 사람입니다. 몇 분은 이미 낯이 익을 겁니다. 저번에 일본 영사관 앞에서 모임 있을 때도 아마 참가한 걸로 알고 있습니다.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jacob Anjuafa and I'm a member of Socialist Alliance. I'd like to start off by making an acknowledgement that we're currently gathering here today on stolen land, the land of the Wurundjeri of the Kulin Nation. They are the custodians of this land who are very much have been at the forefront of opposing the nuclear industry in Australia because they have been the ones who have disproportionately been impacted by the impacts of nuclear. Now, I want to express my solidarity with the organisers of this protest and the Korean community. And within Socialist Alliance, we absolutely condemn the decision by the Japanese government to release radioactive waste into the Pacific Ocean. And we stand in solidarity with everyone across the world who is opposing this reckless decision. The mass protests that have occurred in South Korea opposing Japan's dumping of radioactive wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean is expiring. But this condemnation has not just come from South Korea, it has come from Japan's own citizens. It has also come from the Pacific Islands and to the environment movement as a whole. This is a global movement that is growing every day, and this protest is very much part of that. Moreover, I think this issue is also very much about democratic rights in a lot of ways and the right to have a safe and clean environment. I've actually remembered that this decision to release wastewater has actually been announced for quite a long time. Well, not that long, like for the past 2 years. But ever since this decision was announced by the Japanese government in 2021, there has been clear opposition from civil society on all fronts in this issue. I remember there were reports of protests in Japan and South Korea since 2001 opposing this decision. The fact remains that when the Japanese government made this decision to release radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean, those are the voices they were ignoring when they made that decision. In fact, when it has been reported by organisations in Japan, such as Friends of the Earth Japan, but when they came to consult people about this decision, the only consultative meetings that were held was with representatives of industry groups and local government officials of their choice. This reflects the fact that under this capitalist society we live under, the only concerns that matter when it comes to making decisions that impact on the environment and the health of the people are those are economic considerations. When it we actually, working people, actually have the right to a safe and healthy environment, and our interests should be the ones that take precedence. And I think another thing that has to be pointed out, we're seeing a lot of hypocrisy from Western governments closely aligned with Japan, who at this point refuse to condemn this decision by the Japanese government. But actually it's worse. It's not like they're ignoring it. They're actually they're sending out press releases celebrating the decision and thinking that Japan has acted in the best interest of everyone. In Australia, the government had released such a media release, and they openly endorsed the decision without even stating any concerns that have been brought up by broader society. And I think it's great that no AUKUS Vic was speaking here, because I think this issue of dumping of nuclear waste also cannot be disentangled from the actions of the governments from Japan to Australia to the United States, who are deliberately attempting to militarise the Pacific Ocean as part of their war drive against China. That is why I think it is very important that we have to link opposition to the Fukushima waste dumping to the issue of opposing militarism in the Asia Pacific. Because if all these Western governments who are celebrating this decision are already committed to militarising the Asia Pacific to provoke a war against China, from their perspective, I think they don't really have any concern about the broader the environment. They will justify any decision that occurs within the Pacific, including the dumping of radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean, regardless of how it impacts on people. And I'd like to thank the organisers for that, for me speaking. Finish here.
Committed this horrible crime to the environment. He has also betrayed the comfort women, only with the aim of appeasing, the Japanese imperialist government and the US imperialist government, so that they could build up, the military to provoke a war with China. Yeah, so that's very wrong. And so solidarity to you. I'm really glad that you guys have stood up and made your voice heard, because I've never seen this in Melbourne from a Korean community. So congratulations to you all. You should all be very proud of yourself.